I'd like to call the June 9th, 2020 work study session to order. This meeting is being hosted through live stream on the city's website and by teleconference for public comment. Deputy City Clerk, can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Meyer? Here. Councilmember Percival?
Here.
Councilmember Wright?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Here.
Mayor Brown?
Here.
Thank you.
We'll now move to the public comment period. At this time, members of the public may only comment on an item appearing on the agenda. Please adhere to the following when addressing the council. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes or less. Comments should be directed to the council as a whole and not directed to individual council members. Please adhere to the adopted rules of Decorum Resolution 4545. You may also fill out and submit your comments online at www.hemetca.gov, and those comments will be read aloud. However, submittal must be done before 2 p.m. the day of the meeting. For those who wish to join by teleconferencing, you are able to do so by calling 888-585-9008. When prompted, dial 768-176-038. As a reminder, if you're joining by teleconference, please remember to mute your phone to prevent noise interference until you're given an opportunity for your comments. Deputy City Clerk, were there any electronic comments submitted to be read aloud for closed session?
Yes, Mayor, there were 41 comments submitted for the work study session.
Work study, yes.
I'll go ahead and start. The first comment is from Barbara Cedar. States, in reviewing the project cuts to the police department and fire departments, I am opposed to any of these cuts. We are living in uncertain times, and I believe that every effort should be taken to maintain the public safety. These cuts are not in the best interest of the community that you serve. I also want you to know that it is my understanding that some of these positions are currently vacant. Why would we delete a position that has already been approved? Why not just leave it open to be filled once funds become available? End of comment. Next comment is by Kendall Vieira. I think our budget should be distributed better throughout our community. More than half of our budget should not be going to police. We could really use that budget towards our schools and even creating more recreational areas for kids to keep businesses in a productive way. There were 5 other comments that had the same script, submitted by Willow Murphy, one by Karen Okita, Summer Helms, and Anaya Cruz, and Stephanie Sanchez, which states, I'm a resident of Hemet and I am demanding the restructuring of the city budget so as to prioritize more special services for communities and to drastically minimize spending on the police. Half of the city's budget is allocated towards the police, leaving other important services severely underfunded. Hemet is home to low-income communities and DIPOC who desperately need funding, and every day they don't receive it, their quality of life worsens. I urge you as leaders and representatives of our community to consider the livelihood of your constituents and prioritize essential funding to programs and services that benefit the city of Hemet. Defunding the police and restructuring the budget is an absolute necessity now more than ever. Next comment by Gabriela Martinez. Comment is, the city's budget needs to be redistributed and not allow the police to get half the budget. Please distribute the money to the city and community, not the police. Next is by Iridian Cruz. My name is Iridian Cruz. I live in Hemet for 25 years. I am demanding the restructuring of the city budget, restructuring the amount spent on police to prioritize more social services in this community. The budget of the city is divided with almost half of it going towards the police. This is underfunded other severally important social services. Being home to low-income residents who need funding is making their quality of life lessen. Defunding the police and restructuring the budget is something the people of Hemet need now more than ever. Next comment is from Jacqueline Farmer. As someone who grew up in Hemet my whole life, I demand the city to reduce the spending on the police department and to reallocate those funds into social and public services that build up our community. The services that make up the fabric of our community deserve to be adequately funded. Crime is not random. By looking at the root of the city's issues, we need more jobs, educational opportunities, community centers, and mental health resources. We can prevent crime. Policing was never meant to solve these problems. No wonder police crack under the pressure of being the solution to every community failure. Prevention will always do more than policing. Next comment is by Ashley Salcedo. I'm a resident of San Jacinto, and I'm demanding the restructuring of the city budget as to prioritize more social services for the community, drastically minimizing spending on police. Half of the city's budget is allocated to the police, leaving other important social services severely underfunded. Hemet is home to low-income communities and BIPOC who desperately need funding. Every day they don't receive, quality of life worsens. I urge you as leaders and representatives of our community to consider the livelihood of your constituents and prioritize essential funding to programs and services that benefit the city of Hemet. Defunding the police and restructuring the budget is an absolute necessity now more than ever. Next comment is by Rachel Arroyos. My name is Rachel, and as a longtime resident of Hemet and its surrounding areas, I am appalled to learn about the budget imbalance. We spend an exuberant amount on the Hemet Police Department, nearly half the budget. The police presence is not helping the community, and it's a drain on the budget. Does not allow for proper funding towards social services / public services that would improve the community. In an area of low-income families such as large police force and no adequate social services or public services for them to turn would only perpetuate a cycle of violence and poverty. Please consider restructuring the budget immediately, as this imbalance in funding is harming the community every day. Next comment is by Carolyn Lovett. My name is Carolyn Lovett. I am a resident of Hemet for 10 years. I request a reevaluation and structuring of the city's budget to transfer money out of the police budget and into public services. Half of the city's budget is toward the police department, leaving public services severely underfunded. I urge you as city leaders to make change. Defunding the police can allow for more money to be used for public schools, streets, and companies. We know, parentheses, we all know there are too many potholes, parentheses. Defunding the police and restructuring the budget is more needed than ever. Next comment is by Sydney Amistoy. Hello, my name is Sydney, and I am a resident of Hemet. It has come to my attention that almost half of this entire city budget goes to the Hemet Police Department. More specifically, upon reading the report from the fiscal year of 2018 to 2019, the police department cost the city $17,774,605. That does not include the additional $5,876,200 given through Measure U. Meanwhile, only $333,200 were spent on our city's paramedics. Think of the good that could have been done if just a third of the money went to other programs that can better serve our community. Many of the city's essential social services are incredibly underfunded, and that holds them back from actually serving the community. I am asking you, as representatives of the people in the city, to please consider putting more money into these essential services to help our community. Next comment is by Samantha Madden. Hello, my name is Samantha, and I am a university student studying to be a teacher. I've seen the negative effects of having police budgets, having high police budgets in other cities and states, causing a lack of accountability and a lack of resources for the general public. Hemet needs to cut the funds being proposed to the police department and allocate the money to public services and community programs instead. Invest in people and the resources they need to survive. Next comment is from Sarah Mercado. Hello, my family has resided in Hemet for our entire lives. I feel that it is essential that the city representatives make a conscious effort to help the members of their community. More than half of the city's budget is dedicated to the police of Hemet. But how does this benefit the members of the community? It doesn't. As city representatives, it is your responsibility to ensure and protect the civil rights of your community. Please consider defunding the police and putting those funds towards resources that would better the community. Next comment is by Cameron P. I am a Hemet resident, and I am reaching out to urge that the city's budget be restructured to prioritize our community's social services. I demand the absolute highest possible police budget cuts until the said budget reads $$0, and I would like those funds be reallocated towards community-based public safety approaches, including non-carceral violence prevention and intervention programs. Next comment is from Jade Farmer. My name is Jade. The city of Hemet desperately needs more funding to the community and social services. An increase in these programs is shown to directly decrease crime and activity that the police deal with. Hemet's low-income community needs more support than ever, and both through policing. We need to create a better quality of life and defund the police. Next comment is from Cameron Working Volk. The current budget needs to be restructured to prioritize social services and minimize spending on the police department. Social services in Hemet need to be a priority to help the large low-income population that makes up much of Hemet. The police has too much funding, and those funds need to be redirected in order to strengthen our community. To fund the police, fund social services. Next comment is from Steve Polbrook. Stop looking at costs and start looking at revenue, specifically property values, which means property taxes or our revenues from property taxes are at a level of only 61% of sales tax, whereas according to the California Budget Office, typical property tax revenue is double sales tax revenue. There is a monumental disparity between what we have and what an average California city generates. What is this telling us is that we need to develop plans that clean up the city and eliminate those that drag the city down. Code enforcement allows violations to persist. This must stop. Either force the landlords or homeowners to take action or levy fines and make sure to put a lien on the property for noncompliance. Trust me, when they see a lien and will not be able to sell the property till it is resolved, they will respond. Because of them, it is about money. Pay attention to crime. People move to areas that are safe and they run from areas that are unsafe. This town is drowning in undesirable behavior that needs to be dealt with. I noticed that you did talk about revenues near the end of your report, but again, not one mention of increasing revenue via increasing homeowner property values. I would also offer a few more ideas. Maybe it's time to seriously review the $1.3 million spent on the library. We could save a major portion of it if we shut the facility down for 12 months, or maybe investigate turning the operation over to a private firm, as some cities have successfully done. Park cost another $900,000 per year. I think we should shutter the vast majority. The end result is undesirable element that congregates at the park and cheapen this town, while depressing home values will get the message. Again, this is not for all time, but in a short run, say the next 12 months. The current dire emergency forces us to take drastic action. We cannot afford half measures. Start planning, stop reacting, be bold. In my 20 years, I have seen the city do nothing to protect them, more importantly, increasing home revenue. Next comment is from Ruth Haddon. My name is Ruth Haddon. I reside in Hemet and demand the review of the restructuring of the city's budget. The police are allocated more than half of the city's budget. In fact, I read in the fiscal year 1920 operating budget, the police overtime has just increasingly gone up over the past few years with no explanation. Just a huge increase in funds. As a city resident, it is worrisome for councils our councils continue to throw more money at the police instead of investing in the community. For example, how long did it take to get COVID-19 testing site in Hemet? Too long. We need those funds to be invested in healthcare, employment, education, and housing. Things that would benefit the many low-income residents. I ask that as people in elected positions of power, you do what is best and invest into our community. Next comment is from Mary Crawford. This is the most absurd thing I've heard. We voted a penny sales tax and for more police and fire, so our city could clean up the crime on our streets. And now you want to let them all go. So are you going to give us back our penny tax? The Section 8 housing that attracts some of these people needs to be gotten rid of, and our sales tax money returned to us. There are city rules in place now, but they are not enforced. There are cars parked on lawns and motorhomes parked in front of yards and blight everywhere in Hemet, and the city council does nothing to enforce the laws we have. Next comment is from Leilani Medina. As a resident of the city of Hemet, I noticed many changes, however, none that are beneficial to the city itself. Unnecessary spending going to the wrong things. I believe that money should go towards city work such as trash pickups around the city and landscape. As many know, it is fire season and there are many dry weeds and or grass in our area full of fire hazards and making our city look very unpleasant. This is why the money should go elsewhere other than Hemet PD. Thank you. Next comment. Please move to defund the militarization of the police. We need funds to be allocated towards community outreach, mental health services, crisis intervention, and education. This is not asking for every police officer to be fired. It's asking for their job to be transformed. We want less money spent on guns and equipment and more money spent on nonviolent, non-enforcement-based community outreach. Next comment is from Sam Lamori. I'm Sam Lamori, a resident of Hemet, California, and I think the amount of money going to our police department is ridiculously high. I feel our Hemet Hospital's 2.4-star rating speaks for itself. The amount of negative reviews is astonishing, and it should be fixed. Also, our schools need updated supplies. This year at Hemet High, the air conditioner broke, gas could be smelled throughout the school, desks have broken on students, and Chromebooks break daily. We need more funding going to our hospitals and its workers, and to our schools and teachers who are very much underpaid. Next comment is from Litzy Cruz. My name is Litzy Cruz, and I'm a resident of Hemet. I'm demanding the reconstruction of the city's budget to prioritize social programs in Hemet and minimize the spending on HPD. Over half of the city's budget goes towards HPD. This obviously leaves other important social programs underfunded. Hemet is a low-income community and POC who desperately need funding. Without this funding, their quality of life worsens every day. Growing up in Hemet, I have experienced firsthand what needs to be changed. There is no reason for 85% of the city budget to go towards police when city residents barely see them on the streets. Spending more money on the police department does not fix the problem. It is a matter of spending more on social services that benefit the residents of Hemet, rather than policing their lives and doing nothing to change the problem. I urge you as leaders and representatives of Hemet to consider the livelihood of your constituents and prioritize their lives and futures. Defunding the police and restructuring the budget is a top priority now more than ever. Next comment is from Alaya Webster. I am a recently graduated high school senior in Hemet. While looking over the proposed budget, I saw that we are losing support for our fire department but providing 6% raises for the police department. We cannot hold the belief that only the police are responsible for public safety. Focusing on merely the police is not guaranteed to keep our community safer. It just forces them to bear a greater workload than necessary when we could spread the burden properly between departments. Please consider reallocating Measure U funds for police raises towards keeping our firefighters employed. Los Angeles also reduced overtime pay for police officers without noticing a correlation between increases in crime. This decision could help remedy a portion of the $5 million budget deficit. I hope you consider these points before passing the proposed budget. Thank you for your time. Next comment is from Mary Doggett. More money should be spent on our educational system and less money should be spent on the police. We have a very clear school to prison pipeline that needs to be addressed. Spend less time reacting to misbehaviors and more time proactively educating our youth and community that they have opportunities for their future. Next comment is from Alexis Perez. I believe strongly in the sense of community, and therefore I wish to see a stronger sense of positivity and change in this town. I believe that the reallocation of funds normally used towards the funding of the Hemet Police Department would do this town a greater justice. Next comment is from Aaron Holloway. I am Aaron Holloway, a resident of Hemet, California, and I think the amount of money going to our police department is high. Although you do have a very high crime rates, I feel instead of just giving the police department more money, we should use this opportunity to reform our police system instead of just constantly handing them more and more money, and where that money should go. I feel like our Hemet Hospital's rating speaks for itself. The amount of negative reviews should be fixed. Also, our schools need updated supplies. This year, the Hemet High and air conditioning broke. Gas could be smelled throughout the school. Desks have broken on students, and Chromebooks break daily. We need more funding to go to our hospital and its workers, and to our schools and teachers who are very much underpaid. Next comment is from Aaron Jordan. I would like to urge the City of Hemet to reallocate its funds. The city needs to support and prioritize non-police social services and relegate the police force to only be necessary in the event of an emergency. The current state of the police force as a whole is abysmal. The public does not feel safe having to rely on them. For the safety of these people, the city must fund their programs to help better the city as a whole. The disincentivize the police is willingly compromise this improvement. Next comment is from Brian Gonzalez. I propose that the amount of funds being allocated to the police for raises is excessive. There should be an even split on our budget is being used. For example, we could decrease the amount of funds being used for police and spend the money for educational purposes for schools, such as purchasing textbooks or technology for the students to properly thrive in an environment like Hemet. Also, allocating funds to our local hospital would be best as they are basically a nonprofit at this point. Allowing more money for the hospital would allow for purchase of the colony and improve the environment of the hospital. Next comment is from Monique Moreno. We need to defund the police department. We need to use the money towards the more important issues in our economy. As our representatives, I urge you to show how our community responds to the issues going on right now. Let's put a stop to the problem. Let us be the ones to make change. It all starts from you. Next comment is from Sarah Beckman. I just learned that half of the city's budget goes to servicing the police department, and I am shocked, dismayed, and thoroughly disappointed. I had to go to Hemet Hospital 5 years ago for an unknown emergency as I was suffering from severe pain in my lower back. The hospital was desperate, and doctors cared more about putting me on pain meds rather than getting to the bottom of my ailment. Turned out, after 3 days of me demanding further inquiry into my ailment, a cyst had formed on my kidney and calcified, causing it to cut open my kidney, leading to a severe infection where I was going septic in a hospital bed, where they just kept pumping me full of meds. More of the budget needs to go to our pathetic hospital, not the police, to keep terrorizing citizens. And I haven't even gotten to the education system. You should be ashamed of yourselves for this egregious overuse of monetary supply on the sect of government that glorifies divisiveness rather than unity. All 3 of my children attend Hemet Unified and have experienced faulty equipment on a daily basis. If we better the system our children are coming up in, there would be less need for money to police them. Give our youth, our future, a better chance to not have to ever deal with policing by supporting better advantages through their education. Half of the city's budget goes to pay for a Band-Aid rather than a fix. This fact is nauseating, disturbing, and tells us exactly where citizens lie with you. I find it disrespectful and downright ridiculous. Next comment is from Emily Bell. We need more funds to education and the hospital. They are more important. The funds towards the schools will be able to help kids and new learning equipment. And the funds towards the hospital will also allow the staff to get more medical equipment, which will save people's lives. It will also be able to help with equipment and research towards COVID-19. The hospital needs these funds the most and more than the police, saving lives more than killing them. Next comment is from Maya Avery. The 2020-2021 budget cutbacks are an obvious necessity during this time of economic hardship. However, elimination of 37 vacant police positions as well as 9 FTE fire department positions, including 5 of which are currently filled, which equals laying off 5 individuals. I will continue to allow the city to further spiral into a deeper financial deficit, as it is due to the loss of jobs related to COVID, and now the violent protests may honest working families will be leaving the area if anarchy is further allowed to spiral out of control. Crime is visibly on the rise, and reduction of police force not only gives the city the message that the citizens' safety is not a high priority, but it will drive those that actually support the city to leave. What this will do is further push the city into economic collapse and further increase crime. Next comment is from Jocelyn Rodriguez. Please reconsider the duties and responsibilities of the Hemet Police Department and other public safety opportunities that could better serve our valley. In addition, 50% of our funds are directed to police department. In addition to reforming them, we should better allocate those expenses for other extremely necessary resources, the easiest being the school districts. There's a clear school-to-prison pipeline. Please do more to invest in our youth and residents more than simply policing them. Thank you. The next comment is from Denise Moreno. My name is Denise. I am a resident of Hemet. I am demanding the restructuring of the city budget so as to prioritize more social services for communities and to drastically minimize spending on police. Half of the city's budget is allocated towards the police, leaving other important social services severely underfunded. Hemet is home to low-income communities and BIOPC who desperately need funding, and every day they don't receive it, their quality of life worsens. I urge you as leaders and representatives of our community to consider the livelihood of your constituents and prioritize essential funding to programs and services that benefit the city of Hemet. Defunding the police and restoring the budget is an absolute necessity now. William Renat, the next public comment. My name is William. I am a resident of Hemet and have been for 20 plus years. After looking through the budget plans for our city, I've noticed a considerable amount is put towards the HPD. Hemet, although a small city, has much crime. However, this is a result of our community lacking proper employment, along with our community lack lacks any type of work put into it. Without employment, poverty rates rise, and along with that, most crimes in Hemet are thefts, after all, and this is a direct result from our poverty-stricken city. Funding the police will fund crime. Funding our city as a whole will make us more of a community worth coexisting for. The last public comment submitted electronically is from Rachel K. Comment is to our mayor and Hemet City Council members, please listen to the voice of the people of Hemet. The community groups I am a part of all will overwhelmingly and nearly unanimously say no to any form of defunding our police or fire departments. I am here to demand that there be no budget reductions whatsoever in these departments. Pull funding from other areas, but not there. With the current instability of our nation and world, it is pure madness to harm or shrink these departments in any way, shape, or form. Sincerely, a very concerned resident.
Thank you. Need a drink of water? Do we have any members of the public participating on the teleconference?
There are 2 members on the public teleconference line. Would any of them like to make a comment?
Any members on the teleconference wish to make public comment? You may do so. State your name. You have 2 minutes.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please give us your name
Okay.
and spell your last name.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Gail Wesson, W-E-S-S-O-N. I've been a resident of Hemet for many decades. I support the funding for the police and fire departments. Typically, in other cities, they do take a huge percentage of the budget. I would want to do a little more research to determine why some positions in fire are being recommended for elimination. I had a good conversation with Mr. James today. I'm encouraging any additional, if there is money available, to improve public access remotely to your meetings. I am really having trouble getting access via the Nest cameras. I do a lot on Facebook and Zoom, but the Nest cameras, most of the time I cannot get access to them. So I hope that there is continued improvements to the remote access for the public. The other thing I'd like to mention, code enforcement. I see there's a proposal to eliminate some positions. The city has a requirement, has a Great Rocks program, requirement for rental registration, but I learned from experience that there is no enforcement. A citizen can report properties that are not registered, but there is no penalty or enforcement for that. So that may be a source of revenue for the city. It is a quality of life issue. Thank you so much, Mayor and Councilman, for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wesson. Is there anyone else on the teleconference that wishes to make public comment? Okay, apparently not. Deputy City Clerk, do you have speaker slips from members of the public that are here in person?
Yes, Mayor, there are 4 requests to speak. The first one being Marianne Darwin.
I'm assuming he's still standing in the same spot.
Yes. And we have 2 minutes this time.
Sure. Oh, there we go. All right. Hi. It's been a while. So I get to go first before Pat because I seem to be the nicer one. When I started coming up here, I was coming up here to talk from my heart 4 years ago, and we come up here with facts and numbers, and we try and help you to understand what's going on out in Hemet. Maybe you don't have that information, you don't get out much. So, and it also has helped me to learn about politics and city council. But every time I leave, I shake my head because in disbelief. Many people have come, and it doesn't really go anywhere. We don't really feel that we're being heard. What I just heard, these 40 letters being read, dismantling our police department, are we out of our minds? Are these people really seriously thinking that out of what I just asked, we have 73, 75 policemen, and they think that we need to resculpture that? We were looking to hire more, not get rid of the police that we have. I would like to see more. We were promised more. We pay that 1 penny for every dollar we spend to have more. And I want to see more. I want to see on my streets. I want to see more. If we get rid of the police department, or we even cut it in half, Hemet nobody's going to want to come here. Nobody. And everybody's going to jump ship because it's not going to be a safe place to come. It's not. And I can't imagine me even thinking that I wanted to move, but if that happens, I will seriously be considering it, because there's just no way that this town of about 88,000 people can go with no police. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next comment is from Pat Gregory, followed by Erica London.
Good evening, Pat. Just a reminder, we had to cut it down to 2 minutes per this time.
Sure, I'll talk fast. Thank you. My name is Pat Gregory. I'd like to thank the city manager for acknowledging the severity of Hemet's financial position. While I don't think some of his proposals make sense, he is at least addressing the problem. As an example, I'm not certain how eliminating a vacant position reduces actual expenditures. But I have a bigger issue. We have Councilwoman Krupa and Councilwoman Wright who have ignored Hemet's financial blight for years. In 2016, Councilwoman Krupa misrepresented the health of Hemet to a California subcommittee and suggested an audit wasn't needed. Thankfully, they didn't listen. And when the audit was complete, Councilwoman Wright misrepresented the results of the audit on a video and suggested that the audit said that Hemet had no issues. Well, here we are 4 years later, and once again we see the councilwomen voting to increase the budget for the overpriced city attorney. However, even more disturbing is the fact that both Councilwoman Krupa and Wright knew in 2016 that Measure U would never add boots on the ground as promised, because in 2016 we could not afford the level of service we had then. You advocated for Measure U under false pretenses. Pretenses. This mask is difficult. Looking at this year's budget proposals that actually eliminate firefighter positions, when Councilwoman Krupa and Wright had promised the voters that we would have more firefighters, is even more disturbing. What happened to the $30 million that has been collected for more officers and firefighters? A definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. To resolve this insane position, I respectfully request that both Councilwoman Krupa and Councilwoman Wright resign their positions on City Council and let responsible adults vote on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members, mayor. You're a council member, okay. So my name is Erica Lennon. I have a personal stake in the fight for this budget. Many of you and I have formed personal relationships as well as working relationships. I respect each of you individually, personally, and as a council. Though some of our views are not always the same politically, I think that I speak confidently to say that we are all here for the good of this community. In seeking actions to get grants from the state of California, from the county of Riverside, and even from the city, I sought out facts and truths about the community of Hemet. And before I go any further, I'm going to let you know I am pro-fire department. I am pro-police. We need them. I'm going to read to you a direct quote, and if you need me to, I can email a copy of the letter I received from our Congressman Raul Ruiz when he wrote in support of my City Youth Center, and I'm going to directly quote. This program is much needed at a time when the city of Hemet has experienced higher rates of gang violence, violent crime, and property crime than California as a whole and its neighboring cities in Riverside County. I don't know, please no disrespect, but if that says to anyone in the room that this means we need less police or less fire, I don't know that your best interest is the community. We see kids who suffer because police don't get there on time because they're at another major crime. Police officers, I have a lot of personal relationships with some of them. They're taxed. Our new chief has a lot of people to put to work. And if you're cutting them, you're cutting the head off Hemet. They are the backbone of this community. They have stood for us. They have stood for me. They've stood for my family. They've stood for the youth center, and they've stood for this city council. They're essential. And there's just not enough of them. Not at all.
Thank you.
The same with this fire department. I appreciate your time. Have a great night.
Thank you very much. And if you wouldn't mind forwarding that comment from Congressman Ruiz.
I'll send the entire letter.
You can send it to the city clerk?
Sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And then last public comment is from Eric Gosh.
Dear Mayor and City Council, I'm here tonight as the Measure U Oversight Committee Chair. At our committee meeting last week, the committee unanimously requested that I come tonight and express our comments regarding the city budget. As a side comment, I think most of us know that the city of Hemet has no responsibility for a private hospital in Hemet. It's not a public hospital, nor does the city have responsibility for the school district, which is funded by the state of California. And that your responsibilities, of course, lie with the city of Hemet, unfortunately, not with the school district nor the hospital. First, the city has had a structural deficit of several million dollars annually for the last 5 to 10 years. No council has addressed this basic issue, instead using one-time funds and fiscal shenanigans to cover the fact that the city is living beyond its means. This council needs to make the hard decisions recommended by this city manager to address the structural deficit. The buck stops with you, and it needs to stop now. The Measure U Oversight Committee exists specifically because this structural deficit has gone unresolved. And our job is to ensure that this deficit is not to be solved using Measure U funds. Given the above, and recognizing the incredibly difficult situation the city, and indeed the citizens, businesses, and organizations everywhere share, the Measure U Committee agrees with the city manager's desire to minimize the layoffs and public safety. We support the one-time transfer of $2.5 million from the Measure U reserve or account to prevent the layoff of any police officers and reduce the impact on the fire department as well. Obviously, the reduction of open budgeted positions, vacant positions, is of concern, and we wish that the council and the city management decide on funding those again as soon as hopefully this COVID issue is over. There's no finance saving that cash is king. The Measure U committee is dismayed that in this past year the council has depleted the Measure U reserve fund by almost half, from $11.7 million down to $6.4, spending $5.3 million in cash. Measure U is paying $1.8 million for a new radio system and $900,000 for a fire truck. Both of these expenditures could have been financed at a low 3% rate, keeping $2.7 million in the bank. Even though these are justified public safety expenditures, the council has been poor stewards of the cash reserve of Measure U. Should any of these items be financeable today, Measure U committee encourages that. Measure U also paid for $900,000 in fire overtime this year. The committee is adamant that Measure U will not pay for any more overtime this upcoming year. The fire department must live within its means, like the rest of us. During these constantly evolving times, the Measure U committee must be involved in any discussions on any mid-year budget adjustments that involve Measure U funds. Thank you to both the city staff and council for all your hard work.
Thank you, Eric. Anyone else?
No, there are no other public comments.
Okay, thank everyone for their time and interest in providing input on the city's budget. And with that, I will refer to our city manager for the beginning of our study session.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to start off by saying that this process has been extremely difficult to get us to this preliminary point. We've been able to assemble, put together this budget, but it's by no means been easy. It's by no means been fun, and there are continuing challenges ahead of us. So I just can't emphasize that enough, that it's been extremely challenging to get to this point.
Excuse me, Chris. I just want to get some clarification and preference from council. Our regular session is scheduled to begin at 7. I anticipate that we're going to need more than 26 minutes to get through the work study. So what's council's preference is to stop at 7 o'clock and begin our regular session and pick up on the work study after the regular session? Is that preference? Okay, thank you.
So what I wanted to start off first off was with a discussion about kind of the highlights over the last year. I think there's been some significant achievements over the last year that the council should be proud of, and I think it's a perfect opportunity to provide the staff the recognition for what they've been able to accomplish over the last year. Just recently, we've been able to roll out the implementation of an agenda management system, which individuals can see on our city website. And for the staff that works on the agenda, it's all paperless, it's all digital, and it's in the cloud. We've hired brand new HR staff in HR, so the division has been completely transformed. From just a year ago, we've got completely brand new staff in there. We've been able to hire a brand new police chief as well as a new community development director. We've utilized LCW, Lieber Cassidy, for personnel and labor and legal support, and we've done that for the last 6 or 7 months or so. We've enhanced the use of social media. We've had over 200,000 engagements in the last 2 months. That's pretty significant because of the COVID situation that we've all been dealing with. We've really utilized social media to engage with our community. In the last few months, we've also restarted the city's PEG channel to provide information to the community. And we're also broadcasting local high school graduations on that avenue as well. We've begun the migration to the JPIA for enhanced risk management. That was something that the council set out to do last year. The LED street light retrofit is nearly complete, And then finally, we've had some significant police department station retrofits that have been completed in the last year as well. In addition to that, we've had a number of CIP projects that have been completed over the last year. We've successfully completed the Kirby Street improvement from Devonshire to Menlo. We've completed the fiscal year 2018-2019 slurry seal, the 17-18 slurry seal, completed the 18-19 missing sidewalk links project that was CDBG funded, and then finally a project that had been on the books for many years, completed the Stetson Bridge replacement project late last year, which was pretty significant for the community. So again, I really want to take this opportunity to thank the staff for making all these things come true in the last year. So by way of background, in July 2015, the California State Auditor informed the City of Hemet that I had been selected for review under the High Risk Local Government Agency Audit Program. The program authorizes the State Auditor to identify local government agencies that are at high risk for potential waste, fraud, abuse, or mismanagement, or that have major challenges associated with their economy, efficiency, or effectiveness. In August of 2016, the State Auditor released a report which stated the following: Hemet is a high-risk city due to its financial and organizational risks. Specifically, Hemet's budget deficit has persisted for many years, and our projection indicates that it will continue through at least fiscal year 1920, raising concerns about the city's ability to fund its services. Although the city developed a 5-year plan to address its deficit, inaccurate information and overly optimistic assumptions distort the validity of the city's projection. In addition, we identified inefficiencies in the city's management. So in October of last year, the State Auditor provided an update that they released on their public website as well as in other forms as well. In June of 2019, the City Council approved Hemet's fiscal year 1920 budget, due in part to a transfer to the general fund of $1.2 million of its Measure U revenue, in addition of 1 cent to the sales tax that voters approved in 2016 to raise funds for public safety. Hemet balanced its general fund budget. Although Measure U is a general tax that the city can use for any purpose, the City Council adopted a non-binding resolution that the city may only use Measure U proceeds to fund its public safety costs. The city has also set up a Measure U oversight board to ensure that the city uses the funds for their intended purpose. Without several other smaller transfers from other city funds and the Measure U transfer to offset public safety costs, Hemet's general fund budgeted expenditures would have exceeded its revenues. And so really the challenge started, which we knew in fiscal year 1920 when the council adopted the budget. We knew that coming into this fiscal year's budget that we would have significant challenges, and we started to work through those beginning right after the council adopted the fiscal year 1920 budget. With that, in that same report update that the State Auditor provided to the city and to the community, they recommended that the City of Hemet provide a financial model to the City Council before the council had a chance to adopt the budget. So on January 28, 2020, the staff did that. In that model, we projected out revenues and expenditures for the next 5 years. We projected growth over the course of the next 5 years. One of the assumptions that was included in that presentation, which we made sure to let the council and the community know, was that if there was any change in the local economy, that would specifically alter the numbers that were included in the budget model, financial model. We knew that we had financial challenges up ahead, as displayed by the purple arrows on the graph. Whenever you see the purple arrow on the graph, that signifies a year which we have expenditures that exceed the revenues. So when we presented this model, we knew that if there was any change to the local economy, that would completely shift the financial projections for the city, and it was a fear that we had, and little did we know that in just a couple of months that would become reality for us. As a result of COVID-19, those financial model projections, revenues, have turned the model completely upside down, rendering it no longer beneficial for us to utilize. So during that same time, I provided an update to the mayor and the council about what the budgeting approach would be for this upcoming fiscal year, which was actually fiscal year 2020-2021. So starting with that process, each department and operation in the city received a budget target. So all departments were provided a limit for all maintenance and operation and personnel costs. And the way that we were able to develop that number was rooted in the financial model. So we projected out the revenues that we were anticipated to receive in fiscal year 2020, 2021, and we specifically allocated those revenues to departments to ensure that we had a balanced budget from the very onset. Departments evaluated their current and projected service levels and built their programs and budgets from zero. So this budget process that we went through was a combination of zero-based budgeting as well as target-based budgeting, because departments and operations did have a target that they needed to achieve. Each department's budget was then broken down by program or division with all expenditures justified. And so we had a methodic review of all departments and divisions and the expenditures that they programmed for the upcoming fiscal year. So during this time, all departments submitted their preliminary numbers and budgets from the targets provided. During this same time, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And so the targets that we had provided to the departments did not incorporate or did not anticipate the decline in revenues that we started to see as a result of COVID-19. So the initial budgets that our departments and our divisions prepared included reductions in FTEs in vacant positions primarily. And so the goal for the departments was to live within their means, and so that meant removing vacant positions in order to meet their budget targets. As a result of COVID-19 and the impacts that we've seen with our revenues, all departments were required to reduce their budgets by 10% based on the COVID-19 pandemic and the anticipated lowered revenues that we expect for fiscal year 2020-2021. And so as a result of the 10% reductions that had been provided or requested from the departments and the divisions, that's really how we were able to balance the budget as well as the use of Measure U to minimize the reductions in public safety. So when COVID-19 hit, this had a very significant impact and projected impact for our budget. Our greatest source of general fund revenue is sales tax, which has seen a steep decline due to the restrictions implemented because of COVID-19. So the decline in local consumer spending habits has had a detrimental impact on our businesses, which then directly impacts our ability to fund critical operations within our community. Sharp and immediate declines in sales tax, transit occupancy tax, and various other revenue line items in fiscal year 1920 have taken its toll, but our fiscal year 2020-2021 proposed budget anticipates a recovery as our businesses continue to open. And we've included this in the proposed fiscal year 2020-2021 budget. Based on leading economists, experts, and a newly released report prepared by the Southern California Association of Governments, otherwise known as SCAG, titled Potential Impacts of COVID-19 in the SCAG region, the collective analysis shows that the region may experience between a 38% to 48% reduction in motor vehicle and parts dealers, a 35 to 48% reduction in gasoline stations, and a 53 to 65% reduction in food services and drinking places through December 2021. So this analysis that was completed by SCAG utilized actual data for calendar year 2019 aggregated from the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. So their report assumed the reopening of the economy similar to what we are currently experiencing now. For the city of Hemet, we have assumed a gradual increase in local economic activity beginning at the end of May and continuing into June, and continued growth as we move further into the summer. Information related or information from the State Employment Development Department shows that unemployment for the month of April 2020 reached 18.6% in the city of Hemet. Compared to the month of March, in March the unemployment rate was approximately 7% in the city of Hemet. So just in that month, we saw over an 11% increase in the unemployment rate for the city of Hemet. So this alarming figure reflects another key element from the SCAG report. Our community has a significant number of individuals employed in sectors hit particularly hard by the pandemic. So this unemployment number may further alter spending habits within our community. So one key element of recovery for the city of Hemet includes the reentering of our citizens into gainful employment. And I did mention a report that was conducted by Yale in the staff report that clearly correlates unemployment with a reduction in spending habits for the population. So the table that we have on the screen illustrates the adopted fiscal year 1920 budget, and then our estimate that's been coordinated with HDL, our sales tax consultant, refined by all of our departments and divisions, includes year-to-date actual revenues that have been collected across all operations, and then projections as to what we anticipate the difference in projected revenues for the current fiscal year to be based on the period from the middle of March to June 30th, 2020. And so you can see about a $3.9 million reduction in our revenues, primarily made up in the areas of taxes for us, primarily in sales tax. I should note that a few weeks ago, WRCOG presented, they hired a consultant to do a presentation on the local impacts of Western Riverside County, and they were able to identify the tax revenue categories for all communities in Western Riverside County, and they identified which communities had the highest at-risk revenue sources. And unfortunately, our community was listed as, I believe, the community with the highest risk revenues, which means that our revenues are dependent upon local consumer spending habits, including sales and TOT and other revenues associated with economic trends. You can also note that we have seen a decrease in community development revenue that helps offset costs of providing that service to the community. So Hemet staff prepared our own projections, and they were validated by our revenue consultant. So prior to meeting with our sales tax consultant, our team developed our own projections for the current fiscal year as well as the upcoming fiscal year, and they were validated by HDL. Our expenditures for the current fiscal year remain slightly under budget due to numerous vacancies across the agency, which is a good thing because we're able to make up for the decline in revenues because we've got some vacancies in the agency. In order to grapple directly with the projected deficit for the current year, under my direction, the executive team took immediate actions to provide expenditure reductions for the remainder of this fiscal year. I should note that they were not popular, they were not easy, they were not any actions that I was proud of, but they were necessary to ensure flexibility moving forward. Given our revised revenue projections, combined with our aggressive cost control measures and existing expenditure levels, we estimate a shortfall of approximately $1 million for fiscal year 1920. So this shortfall can be made up by using one-time revenues, including reserve funding. Once we figure out and determine what that actual dollar amount is, staff will make sure to bring that item to council so that we can get the direction and authorization to move forward with that. So the next part of this presentation will go over the proposed fiscal year 2020-2021 revenues, and for the sake of this specific portion of the presentation, Measure U has been excluded from this discussion. So as you can see, we've listed the overall general fund revenues for the city of Hemet.